Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. People share their first-hand supernatural experiences. Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. My deja vu. In the 9th grade, I sat in my English class waiting for the lesson to begin. My teacher always liked to take 10 minutes at the beginning of class to just talk about everything and anything. So this one particular day, he begins with the story of his friend that was supposed to be on a flight, but canceled at the last minute when he had a dream of a plane crash. The small plane took off without him and later crashed. He then told us the story about a robbery that had occurred at his house a few years prior. He said he woke up in the middle of the night when he heard footsteps in the hallway. He picked up his baseball bat named Charlene, which he kept bedside, beside his bed, and when the crook opened the bedroom door, my teacher shattered his forearm with the baseball bat. After he was done telling us these stories, he began his lecture, but was immediately interrupted by a seagull smacking the window of our classroom. The next day I came to class and sat at my desk. My teacher began his 10-minute talk. He started with the story of his friend who had a dream of a plane crash. I put my hand halfway through the story, realizing that I've heard this before, and that teacher must have forgotten he told us already. But I was telling him, as he was telling the story, my classmate looked at me and said, "No, he didn't." So my teacher finishes his story, and then segues into his next story about a robbery that occurred at his house a few years prior. This time I beat him to the punchline and said, "You told us this yesterday. You break the guy's arm with a baseball bat." Again, my classmate looks at me and one guy tells me to shut up. My teacher says, "Well, yeah, I broke the guy's arm with a baseball bat. Did I tell you already?" I tell him he told us yesterday, and that his baseball bat is named Charlene. He's baffled. I know the name of his bat, but again, everyone seems to deny he ever told us this. I can't believe what's going on. I begin to laugh, thinking that I'm going crazy. So I say, "No, watch. A seagull is going to hit the window within the next 2 minutes. Of course, nobody believes me, and this punk tells me to lay off the crack pipe. The class settles down, and my teacher starts his lesson. 5 seconds later, a seagull hits the window. Once I was driving to work. Suddenly I blurted out Fond du Lac, which I have subsequently found is a place in Wisconsin. This took me by surprise because I'm not prone to blurt out obscure places' names to myself whilst driving. That evening I was driving home doing 80 in the passing lane. I was passing a trailer truck. Got halfway up the trailer, and on the trailer right in the middle it said Fond du Lac, which took me so much by surprise that I hit the brake to make sure I wasn't seeing things. As I looked at the truck, something happened in lane 1 and the truck swerved hard over into my lane because I had already braked. I was able to avoid narrowly being run off the road and crushed. Who knows, by the truck as it ran into my lane. Fond du Lac. True story. No witnesses. My grandmother was a respected Buddhist monk in the southern region of the US. When he passed away, dozens upon dozens of monks from around the country came in to pay their respects, and every non-married male in my family became a temporary monk for a week as a sign of respect. One evening, my uncle and a few of my cousins and I were conversing with one of the higher-ranked monks, and he started talking to my uncle about his life. At first, we were all interested because he was telling my uncle information like the date when he was born, various locations of birthmarks on his body, and so on. Nothing too crazy, although it was hilarious for the rest of us. But then the monk starts lecturing my uncle for the things he had been doing, and my uncle didn't really think much of it at first. Then the monk begins to tell the story of how my uncle in his early 20s stole a car, described how he flipped it into a ditch, and then describes how my uncle had to lie to his wife about how he got a concussion. My uncle says he had never told anyone this story before. The monk proceeds to do this to all of us. We had never met this particular monk before, and it was amazing that he was not only nailing exact birth dates. I was probably 16 or 17, so I didn't have any crazy secrets like my uncle, but the monk did tell everyone exactly where I hid my money, which I thought at the time was a spot no one would ever find. Also, I don't believe in superstition, ghosts, voodoo, etc. I have just one. It's not too crazy, but I was never able to explain it, and what pisses me off is that I expect I'm never going to. I was about 15, late 98, early 99. I'd been really interested in lucid dreams and woke up one night at 2:30 a.m. from a long and involved one. As was my habit at the time, I wrote down the whole dream in detail on a paper near my bed. While I was putting down the last few details, I heard music coming from the hallway. The house was dark and quiet. My parents were asleep and the house is pretty small and has only one floor. The music wasn't like anything I'd heard before. It sounded like someone was pouring sleigh bells down a series of regular troughs. Lots of tiny tinkling notes merging into a chaotic tune. For like 30 seconds I sat on my bed, creeped out, thinking this is so surreal and where could this be coming from? Someone parked outside. And other things you think when you're 15 and awake and home alone and kind of a wimp. I finally got up the nerve to get up and walk over to the door, and the noise got louder as I did. Clearly it was coming from down the hall. I saw out through the ajar door that everything was dark. I knew that I would have to walk out there to see what it was, but it was such a strange experience, and I found myself terrified of the dark hallway, so I chickened out. I backed away from the door and sat on my bed, wrapped the blanket around me, and listened. I knew I wouldn't be able to remember the music, but I tried to verify that it had a tune, and it did. Chaotic though it was, I could anticipate parts of the melody, and I took the piece of paper on which I had written my dream and added a note at the bottom. 2:30 a.m., strange music, scared. And then I just stared at the doorway. About a minute and a half later, the music faded down and stopped. There was silence. I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel like sleeping. Eventually, I got up the nerve to walk out my door and into my parents' room across the hall, where I stood awkwardly at the foot of their bed, not sure what I would say if I woke them up. Finally, I decided not to and walked back into my room. I read for a while and fell asleep. The next morning, I asked my parents. They didn't know anything and couldn't think of a piece of music that it might be. My dad suggested tubular bells. I've never heard it again or figured out what happened. The obvious suggestion is that I dreamt it. This doesn't fit for several reasons. One, I've never confused a dream for a real experience after waking up. Two, I remember thinking at the time, years from now, when my memory of this has faded, I'll probably start telling myself that it was a dream, and it'll probably help me wonder less. But I know with certainty right now that it wasn't. Third, I can't really write text in my dreams, let alone write a full page of narrative. Fourth, I looked at the paper the next morning and saw the note. I wish I could find that paper again, but my room was always a mess of stacks of paper, and sometime in the next few years it vanished. I don't expect anyone to figure this out. I don't expect to ever find an answer, and I don't think this was anything supernatural. The lesson here, and the reason I retell the story, is this. Forget what the horror movies teach you. Even if you're scared, go investigate the strange phenomenon, or you might just find yourself wondering for the rest of your life. Alright, just want to thank you guys for the feedback on the new format. Hillary, Spectre, and a few others. Thank you. Also to D Knox yesterday, or the day before. I do read the comments, and what you said isn't wrong. Like, I do most of the time read these stories live and go. I try to browse over them when I can, but sometimes a little pressed for time. So the imperfections hopefully make it a little more human, but we always work to limit that, of course. So thank you for listening and continuing to support us, and we always will do our best. So have a great night, guys. See you soon. Let me first say I'm a skeptical atheist, and my only conclusion is we must have made it up and our brain tricked us into making it a real memory, but it's an extremely vivid memory my friend and I both have. We were about 9 or 10 years old, and we were talking on the phone. It was a little after 7 at night in the winter, and it was dark outside. While we're talking, we both see our windows start to glow, like there's a bright light outside. It starts dim, builds slowly, then suddenly gets blindingly white and disappears. We live just one street away from each other, so we're wondering what the hell we just saw. That's when I look over at the clock and realize it's 10:30. He said his clock matched mine. 3 hours seemed to pass in a few seconds, and the next day there was a circle burned into the grass in the field next to us, about 15 yards in diameter. It freaked us out enough that we never told anyone else about it, but to this day we both remember it exactly the same. And to reiterate, I don't believe something paranormal happened, I just don't know what did happen. A few years back, it was around 3:30 a.m., and I woke up because of horrendous noise outside my bedroom door, which leads straight to a patio, i.e. more or less to the open. The noise could be described like this. Imagine the largest array of speakers you can think of. Now imagine some pretty deep synthesizer bass sound playing through all of them. It was approximately like that, although the sound was freakier. Also, it was kind of oscillating at a very slow pace, approximately 4 or 5 seconds. At first, when it woke me up, I was in a semi-dreamlike state, but when I realized that it was real and one of the loudest things I had heard, I bolted up and sat upright in my bed listening. It seemed to be on for ages. I was relieved that I couldn't see into the patio, as if there had been something present. I would have probably shit myself, and if there wasn't, I would still shit myself, totally baffled as to the whereabouts. However, I was still kind of scared without saying anything. On top of that, a light started shining into my room through the covered window, as if someone had come up the driveway. Except there was no car, and my house is isolated in that the only car that could come up that driveway would be that of our family, and not just random cars driving by. I slapped myself to make sure I was not dreaming. After about 10 minutes, I realized that it was slowly getting further away as the sound pitch got higher, and after another 5, it was gone. Maybe it was less, I didn't count. It took me a while to get back to sleep. Thank God that I wasn't fully aware of what had happened, as I think I probably wouldn't have been able to fall asleep then. I knew it was real, as the first thing I did when waking up was smack my alarm clock to, with the help of the backlight, see what time it was, i.e. approximately 3:30 a.m. What also freaked me out was that the next morning, while playing ping pong with my younger bro, he said that the door to the computer living room was open, and I knew that I had closed it as the last person leaving it the night before. I knew a man who was hired to be a security guard at an old homosexual man's house. The man's family had hired him because he owned a lot of valuable stuff and was just giving it away to random twinks he knew from the local community. Seriously, he would give a random guy an original Picasso for a BJ. He didn't care, he was dying. He also had an autographed copy of Mein Kampf. Lots of priceless historical stuff in the house, so his family hired this guy I knew to keep people out of the house and make sure no more Picassos just walked out of there. The guy was there basically all the time and stayed there at night too. But at night he would hear strange noises and shit, so he would walk around and check what it was. One night he saw a woman in a dress walk down the stairs, pull out an old revolver, and shoot herself in the head. Then he saw the same thing every few nights, always about the same time of night. The woman blows her brains out and then vanishes as the brain matter is flying everywhere. This was just one of the stories he told me, but the others were not as shocking. I believe that he saw all this, if only from how terrified he seemed as he was telling what he saw. Well, the old man died eventually, so his services were no longer required, but then the guy I knew died too. He had a stroke. Turns out he had a massive brain tumor, and the doctors told his girlfriend that he was probably hallucinating all the crazy shit he had been seeing. So people who think they are seeing crazy shit on a regular basis, you might want to get your head checked. I was living in Manhattan and unemployed, and money was getting real tight. I'd been taking a nap on a Saturday afternoon and had a dream in which my father and I were walking down a country road, Andy and Opie style. In my dream, my dad said something to me which was financial advice, which was very strange because my father never said anything to me while he was alive, like how to throw a ball or be a man, much less how to deal with money. I woke from the dream and was hungry. There was no food in the apartment, so I go downstairs to the bodega across the street and get something to eat. As I'm walking back to my building, I see that there are a few pieces of mail dropped on the sidewalk. I pick them up very quickly and take them up to my apartment, hoping no one saw me pick up what was obviously not mine. I get back to my apartment and can tell that one of the envelopes contains a credit card. I open it up, and it's a gold American Express card. I read the letter inside and ascertain that some guy who lives in the city was mailing the card out to his wife, who's living in East Hampton. I begin to contemplate how easy it would be to go on a shopping spree in Manhattan with this newly found American Express card. I begin to fantasize about how I can go to Barney's and get a new suit for a job interview, and go buy a new computer, and I can get groceries, and I could get myself out of these financial straits I was in, and Amex would eat the cost. I had never done anything like this before or ever been in trouble with the law, but I was getting desperate. Then suddenly I remembered the dream I had just half an hour ago, and the advice my father gave me walking down that country road. He had said only 5 words to me in my dream: leave the credit card alone. I cut up the card and threw it in the garbage. In my junior year of high school, I woke up suddenly one morning without my alarm clock. This never happens. I sleep like a rock, requiring an actual system of alarms that go off at 10-minute intervals to make sure that in case I hit snooze on one of them in my sleep, I'll have a backup. Anyway, I share a room with my sister, who wasn't in the room when I woke. The light next to my bed was on, placing me in a circle of light in the middle of the darkness of the rest of the house. Usually, kitchen light is on because my mom gets up for work. I got up and went out through the living room and kitchen in the dark. I headed toward my parents' room because I couldn't figure out where my sister might be. At their doorway, I turned back to check the bathroom and my brother's room. The bathroom was dark and empty, and my brother wasn't in his bed. He usually didn't get up until later than us because he was in middle school. There was no reason why he would be up. I went back through the house toward my parents' room, thinking they all must be in my mom's bathroom while she was getting ready. The bathroom light was off. My parents' bed was empty. I freaked out and went back to my room, where the only light in the house was. As I passed the living room, an inhumanly tall, thin, dark figure warped from the hallway to directly in front of me. It wasn't physical, more of a shadow, but it bore down on me and then circled me faster than any creature could have. It was gone almost immediately, and I was so freaked out that I didn't even notice until I got back into my room that all of the normal lights were on: the kitchen, the bigger light in my room, and one in my parents' room. My sister was in my room when I entered, standing in front of the mirror. I was so confused and shaken that I didn't say anything to her. I just went to my brother's room where he was sleeping in his bed. When I went back out, I saw my mom in the kitchen. The only way I can explain this is that I never did wake up. The fact that I feel like I had woken up so suddenly is the first clue to that. The shadow thing could have been my fear, making me anthropomorphize something inanimate, enhanced by the fact that I was sleeping in the first place. I was renting an apartment with a guy I'll call Fat Pete. On this particular weeknight, I was upstairs in my bedroom with the door shut and about to fall asleep, but I kept hearing a rustling in the kitchen downstairs. Drawers and cabinet doors seemed to be obsessively opening and closing. This went on for about 10 minutes, and I was beginning to get frustrated because I was trying to get to sleep, and I figured Fat Pete was on another drinking binge and now looking for food or cooking. I didn't want to go downstairs and confront him because he was a big fat jerk, and all I wanted to do was get to sleep. A drawer would open. I could hear the knives and forks jostle about, and then the drawer would shut. Same thing with the cabinet doors, open, shut, open, shut. When you live in a place for a while, you get to know sounds pretty well, and I was certain that this was happening. Just about the time I decided I couldn't take it anymore, I began to get out of bed but heard him shout to his girlfriend, who was staying with him that night, "They're here," and he bounded out of his room and down the stairs. He had called the police because he and his girlfriend heard noises too. They had peeked out their door, saw my door was shut, and the lights downstairs were off, and decided it must be an intruder. He grabbed his keys, ran to the door, and unlocked it. 2 cops burst in and fanned through our small apartment. There was one back door bolted shut with a key, as was the front door, and no signs of forced entry. In fact, being a drafty apartment, I had temporarily sealed all the windows for the winter with a kind of shrink-wrap plastic film that is made taut and transparent when you hit it with a warm hairdryer. There was no way someone could have gotten in those windows without leaving obvious evidence. The police searched the place and found no one. There was no possible way anyone could have gotten in or out with the key-bolted doors and sealed windows. The police found no evidence of entry either. I heard the noises independently of him and his girlfriend. So what the hell was it? I had a 200-pound square solid dresser tip over and crash to the floor at 3 a.m. while I was right next to it. I was lying in bed with a laptop less than 2 feet away and saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I looked up and past the glare of the LCD I could see the shadowed corner of this huge-ass dresser tipping up, and it was so impossible that I sat there staring blankly at it, thinking, if I thought at all, I'm not really seeing that. This isn't real. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as this huge, heavy dresser, silhouetted in the hallway light, teetered up on its 2 front legs, leaned past the center of gravity, swayed out, and then landed with the most terrific crash. It shook the whole apartment. I bet the neighbors were pleased. It scared me into a state of catatonia. I just sat there as my boyfriend raced into the room asking me what had happened, and I couldn't move or speak. I just looked at him, then turned over in bed and sort of went to sleep from fear. Something I haven't done since childhood. There was no explanation for that. 2 people had to work together to move it anywhere, and I was sitting right there and watched it tip out and over. It was against an outside wall in the 2nd floor apartment. That thing moved by itself. Nothing else could possibly have moved it short of an earthquake, and there wasn't one. In that same apartment, we had a container of coffee fall off the microwave with no one in the room. It just tipped out, and there was coffee in a fan across the floor. That one's harder to call unexplained because no one was there. And I guess it could have been natural, but that dresser? No way. That was strange. I was on the phone talking to my girlfriend, probably 14 at the time, and she was playing with a Ouija board. Oh boy. She was telling me she was communicating with this guy's spirit who had died in a car crash. Yeah, I said. So I hear this swirring sound over the phone. I inquire, and she replies, the pointer is going around and around really fast. It usually means the spirit is angry. She asks the spirit why he's mad and he spells boyfriend. She denies being my boyfriend. Apparently the spirit has a crush on her, which she discovered during her little talk with him. So, I'm here, sitting on my couch, randomly flipping through channels, and I tell her I don't see what she plays with dumb stuff like that. I hear the swirling again. She asks again why the spirit is mad, and she gets the same response, boyfriend. She tells the spirit again that she's single, which is followed by the spelling lie. She asks, how do you know? So she starts reading the letters on the board. Gloscow. Babe, what does Glasgow mean? I don't know, I reply. I'm sitting here listening over the phone to this. I've happened to stop the channel on Wheel of Fortune. It's the bonus round, and the guy is just starting to reveal the letters Gloscow. I think I sat there staring blankly at the screen, wondering if they were watching TV at the same time, to try to explain how she came up with the sound. My girlfriend lived out of the city at the time. Her family didn't have cable TV. That night, as I slept in bed, I rolled over and turned looking at my closet. I started to see this bright yellow flashing light turning on and off. Mind you, my friends and I used to steal these yellow flashing lights from the construction zones near our house, and the only way to turn the lights off was to physically remove the lid from the battery enclosure. I had this thing completely disconnected, sitting on my shelf, and it started flashing in the dead of night. I ended up just putting the covers over my head and falling asleep. The craziest thing to ever happen to me. My wife is sensitive to paranormal stuff, so things are happening all the time around here. This past week, we lost a very beloved cat. It had 4 ghostly incidents. We had just found out the cat had a tumor, and my wife was taking a video of me with the cat on my lap. An orb descended from the ceiling and shined across the area of the cat where the tumor was. The following day, with the cat's health fading, he was lying under the dining room table, and my wife went under there to be with him. She said their heads were 4 to 5 inches apart. She heard very clearly the sound of tiny bells ringing right there in the small space between their heads. The cat heard it too. The next day we dropped him off for surgery to remove the tumor and returned home. A few minutes before the cat went under the knife, my wife saw 2 orbs go across the room. She grabbed her camera and started shooting video, saying, "I saw it in motion. If you're here, please show yourself." When we played back the video, we could hear a woman's voice loudly whisper, "Hear me." It's kind of superimposed over my wife's voice, but very clear and distinct. The final incident happened a few minutes after we got the phone call telling us the cat didn't survive the surgery. We were sitting on the floor with our other cat, and my wife felt a very distinct nudge in her back, exactly like the cat who just died used to do. I was the biggest skeptic in the world until I started living with my wife, and when she would tell me things she saw or heard, I always would try to offer some rational, possible explanation, but my own eyes and ears convinced me this shit is real. The thing that enlightened me happened before we were married. We had just laid down to bed and turned the lights off. It was no more than a minute later that we both heard a strange sound emanating from 2 corners of the bedroom, up near the ceiling. It sounded like something warping in from another dimension. The sound built to a loud crescendo, and at the instant it stopped, the lamps on each side of the bed came on. Yeah, I was freaked, but so many things have happened over the years, we're almost used to it. Stuff has happened in 3 different houses, so it's not the location, it's my wife. Her whole family is sensitive to paranormal events.